Welcome everyone to today's webinar. We do a couple of webinars a month. Some of them are overviews that are for people that are either new to ClubExpress or looking for information on association management solutions. I very often do webinars about particular pieces of functionality. And today we're doing another one in a series, and this is sort of role-based. We've done one for ClubExpress for membership directors or ClubExpress for communications directors. And today we're doing one ClubExpress for club and association treasurers, and let you know what kinds of information you need to know and what features and facilities you have available to you. But let's take care of a little bit of housekeeping first. All of the phones and microphones are muted. And at the end of Samantha's demonstration, we will revisit the chat window, see if there's anything that hasn't already been addressed. And this is particularly useful for those people that are watching a recording of the webinar. And speaking of recordings, all the recordings are available. If you go to clubexpress.com and click on the Cool Stuff link at the top of the page, and then click on the Webinars tab, you'll see a schedule of upcoming webinars. And at the bottom of the page, you'll see recorded webinars. And similarly, right above the webinars tab, there's a tutorials tab. And we've been publishing tutorials like how to update your member profile. And so these are very targeted tutorials for individual modules. And all of our tutorials and webinars are recorded and stored on YouTube. So if you go to YouTube and you are viewing one of our videos, you can click on the subscribe button and optionally on the bell icon so that you're notified when new content is added to our channel. And finally, if you are using ClubExpress, and particularly if ClubExpress is working really well for your organization, we'd like for you to go to clubexpress.com/reviews and click on one of these sites and leave a review so that other people that are evaluating association management solutions will have the benefit of your experience and how it's working for your club. Today, Samantha is going to talk about ClubExpress for treasurers. So Samantha, how'd you like to share your screen with us?
Today's webinar is just for treasurers. And if you happen to like treasury functions, it's for you too. So this is I believe it's the third in our series of role-based webinars. So we did membership directors, we did communication directors, and today we're going to talk about treasurers. So to give you an overview of what you're going to accomplish today after the webinar is that you're going to get to know all of the functions that you should be working with or familiar with in your role as treasurer. So of course, we're going to talk about the basics, transactions, payments, bulk payments, which is a feature that many of you may not know about. We'll talk about issuing charges to members and non-members, how to handle credits and refunds, whether you are issuing the refund or if you've taken advantage of our refund account through ClubExpress, which we'll talk about. We'll talk about financial accounts, reporting, all of your reporting features that come with your site. Remitting fees. What does it look like when ClubExpress collects all of the money flowing through your site and then pays that out to you throughout the month? We'll also talk about our QuickBooks integration. For those of you who are using QuickBooks, whether it's desktop or online, we'll give a brief overview of what that looks like for both pieces and how you might enable that on your site. We'll talk about the modules that you might use as treasurer, ways to communicate with your members regarding outstanding payments that they might have, and we'll talk a little bit about support that we offer financially for international clubs or associations. So we'll talk about international currency and ways that we handle payments and transactions for international organizations. So in today's demo, we are going to first talk about transactions, payments, and bulk payments. And I'll be coming back and forth to our slide here so we can kind of see where we're at and what it is that we're looking at. So first, we're going to take a look at transaction payments and bulk payments. And we're going to take a look at the People Manager and our transaction search feature. So I am going to sign in to our demo club as Martin Smith. So Martin Smith is the admin of the Northwest Balloon Club, and he handles a lot of things. He's membership director, he's treasurer, he does everything. So when Martin Smith signs in, because he's an administrator, he has access to the control panel, which is of course the back end of your website. Now, most of the time that as treasurer you might be spending on the back end of your site is going to be based in the money tab of the control panel, with a sprinkling of a couple of other tabs. So this would be really beneficial to note, especially as a treasurer, you are not a full administrator. You might just be a coordinator. So when you sign in as a coordinator, you may not see all of the options that I see before me. Administrators have access to everything on the back end of your site, whereas coordinator is given more specific rights. So some of the modules that I talk about today, you may not necessarily have access to, but it's certainly something that you could talk with another administrator in your organization about getting access to. So the first stop that we'll make today, and again, because these are role-based, there are more high-level overview of these items, so we won't go into a very crazy amount of detail for each of the features that I'm going to show you today. All of those items can be found in other webinars and tutorials that we have posted on our YouTube channel, and of course, our help system. So this is just to give you an idea and a broad overview of how all of these items work together. So our first stop is going to be in the People tab under Admin Functions and the People Manager. So this is one of the places that you can do a handful of different things. You can manage transactions. You can apply payments to members. You can create charges. So let's talk about how we might find members with outstanding payments through the People Manager. So previously, you'd have to sort of search through looking for members who had a $ icon next to their name. But with the new People Manager and the new search features that we have, it's actually a filter that you can select. So at the very bottom of the filters, one of the filters is with pending payment. Now, I'm going to leave the member status as active and expired. Those are the only members that I'm interested in right now. And I'd like to search for those with a pending payment. And once I hit search, I'll get a list of all of the members within my database who have an outstanding payment. So right away, I can see consistency in the maintain column. Every single one of these line items has that $ icon. Now, if you're familiar with the back end, you'll know that that icon appears not only in the People Manager, but also in our transaction search feature. They both lead you to the same place. They lead you to the payment screen. Now, the payment screen, of course, is what you're going to see as a member, just with a few less options as far as a payment method. As an administrator, you'd really be looking at the payment page if the member has sent in another form of payment other than paying online with a credit card or PayPal. So as an administrator, when you visit a payment page that is more than one transaction, all you have to do is select those line items. On the right-hand side, you'll see an edit icon that allows you to edit the amount of that transaction. So perhaps maybe the member sent in a check to only cover half of what they might owe. You can edit that amount to just apply the correct payment. Now, at the very bottom here, you'll see that Audrey actually has a credit that's being applied against what she owes the Northwest Balloon Club. And we'll talk about credits a little bit later today, but the credits essentially just sit on her account until she's ready to use them. And they can be used, as you can see here, she's used it to pay for classified ad listings. She can use it to pay for an event. She can wait and apply it to her renewal. She can really do anything that she'd like with it. And if we scroll down a little bit further, we see that we have a coupon code that you're allowed to enter. So coupons are another thing that you have available on your site, and we'll take a look at that a little bit later today. Now, let's take a look at someone who doesn't have any credits available and what their options look like. So Mike Brady also has an outstanding payment, and you'll notice that he has a payment schedule. So if you're familiar with our events, one of the options that you have within an event is to create a payment schedule, especially if you have an event that's a little pricier. Maybe not everyone can afford to pay the cost of the event right up front. You can issue a payment schedule when you're creating that event, and your members just simply pay on the schedule. They get notifications when they have a payment due, and they can apply that payment all at the same time. So if I go ahead and select these amounts, regardless of whether or not it's a payment schedule, I have different payment methods as an administrator that I can apply to this transaction. Now, the first item is a credit card. So if I happen to have the member or non-member's credit card in front of me, I'm able to apply that payment for them. But of course, they can do that themselves. I can also note that I've received cash or a check. I can write off the payment. Now, when you write off the payment, emails are not sent to the user. So it's just a transaction that gets zeroed out on your end with the proper coding for any accounting system that you might use. The next option would be to comp or forgive that particular item. And you have the option to send an email to that particular member, including notes. The last two, so the first would be processed by a separate system. If you allow your members to pay through other means like Venmo or Zelle, you can still mark that that item's been paid for, so it doesn't continue to sit on their account. And the last item, payment received from chapter. If you are an organization that has chapters, districts, and regions, you have the ability to mark that individual payments were received by a chapter. So if you have your individual chapters sending you checks, you can mark those as having been paid. Now, that's addressing our transactions and payments through the People Manager. Let's take a look at one more item in the People Manager, and that's issuing charges. Just like the payments can be accessed through a couple of different screens, which we'll go through today, so can your charges. If you take a look at one of the center icons in the Maintain column, that's our standalone charge credit icon. It allows you to issue a standalone charge or credit to an individual member through the People Manager. Now, it's not the only place that you're able to do this. It's just one of the spots that you're able to do this. When you select either charge or credit, the fields might change, allowing you to enter in different information. So, for example, a description, of course, the amount, the type, what the charge or the credit was for, and you'll notice that if you have QuickBooks integration with your website, nearly every item that has a charge associated with it is going to ask you for a QuickBooks item name. So you have the ability to associate all of the items on your website if you're using QuickBooks with that QuickBooks item name. And it really helps streamline everything to where you're not managing spreadsheets and managing your website and managing QuickBooks. It takes care of everything for you. So those are the items that you can address, transaction payments and issuing charges and credits through the People Manager. But like I said, there are other places on your website where we can actually do a lot of these things. So let's go back into the control panel.
Samantha, before
Yes.
you leave the People Manager, we have a question that says, does a member need to apply the credit manually or is it automatically applied? And you'll see that when Samantha went to Audrey's bill here, it is automatically applied, although can the member decide how much is being applied? Or is this just an admin feature? I don't recall.
Yes, the member can choose to save that credit. So if she decided she wanted to just pay the $3 and save her $19 credit for another transaction, she can.
So she could change this to 0.
Correct.
Okay.
So we'll move to the Money tab. And in the Money tab, the first stop that we're going to make today is our transaction search feature. So when I visit transaction search, the first screen that I'm going to see is just a search screen that has pre-selected transactions and payments that are unpaid from everyone, not just members or non-members. You, of course, have a bunch of different additional search features that you can use to narrow down the items that you're looking for. I'm just going to select search. And so now we see a whole host of items. We see the member name, all of the transaction types, the transaction date reference number, and the amount and status. In the Maintain column, you can see a receipt of the transaction. You can visit the payment page to apply a payment in the exact same way that you'd be applying a payment through the People Manager. And you can also print invoices for that particular either transaction or member, meaning the member would get an invoice for all of the transactions that are open on their account. Now, as far as status, you'll see that a bunch of these say hold, and there isn't an option to apply a payment or print an invoice. That's because hold charges are charges that are basically on hold. The transaction has not been created, but it's ready whenever you are. This typically is going to happen if you have memberships that require administrative approval. So when you have a membership that requires administrative approval, the prospective member does not get charged until you approve their membership. So John Anoop, for example, signed up. His membership has not yet been approved, and so his transaction is on hold. Once his membership gets approved, that hold transaction will turn to an unpaid transaction, and you'll have the opportunity to apply a payment at that stage. Now, another really great feature of our transaction search is bulk payments. It's one of my personal favorites. So at the very top, instead of selecting transaction payment search, I selected bulk payments, and I'm going to select search again. And you'll see that my screen changed just a little bit. I'm still seeing all of those line items, but to the left, I now have checkboxes next to everything. Bulk payments allows you to apply one payment that's been received by you to multiple transactions at once. Now, this is most useful if you have a group of people who are being paid for by one check or one envelope of cash that you've received. So let's say that a business owner has decided to send a payment in to cover event registrations for a bunch of his employees to come to your event. Maybe he's even requesting that you send him an invoice because he'd like to cover those. Let's go ahead and select all of those event registrations that he wants to pay for. Now, on the right-hand side, as I'm selecting each of those individual items, I can see a running total on the right-hand side of my screen. And I have two options. If I select invoices, it allows me to either print out transaction invoices, so one invoice per transaction, or a grouped invoice that's going to list each of those line items out. Once I've received that payment, I can select bulk payments and apply the payment in the same way that I would apply it on the payment screen. Only now I'm applying a payment to more than one line item as opposed to going into each of those items individually. So I'm going to say that we've received the check from ABC Corp, apply the payment, and now those transactions are gone. They've all been taken care of. So that's our bulk payment feature. And of course, this is included. It's not something that you pay extra for. It's just an additional option within our transaction search feature. So we'll go back into the control panel, and we've talked about the ability to apply, search for open transactions, apply payments. Now let's talk about credits and refunds. And let's take a look at where we are. We've talked about issuing charges. We've talked about transaction payments and bulk payments. Now we're going to talk a little bit about issuing some charges and credits and refunds. So let's go back into the Northwest Balloon Club here. And let's take a look at open credits and multiple miscellaneous charges and credits. In multiple miscellaneous charges and credits, you're going to see a screen that looks very familiar, or at least it should. It's basically a larger version of the charge credit screen that we saw in the People Manager earlier. And it allows you to either issue a charge or a credit to one person or multiple people at one time by selecting those members from the available list of members. And right now I'm just double clicking the member name and it moves it over to my selected member list. I can also select the member and click the arrow, and it moves all of those members to my selected member list. So when I create a charge or a credit, it's going to issue that item to everyone on my list. So if you have maybe a whole host of members who volunteered for something and you want to maybe give them $5 or $10 for volunteering, or maybe you give a birthday credit every month and you would like to just get all of those birthday credits out of the way at one time. Again, this gives you the option to save a little bit of time where you're not necessarily going into every single individual record to issue these items to that particular member.
Samantha, can you do a select all?
So the multi-selects work with holding control and selecting individual items. And to select all, you would just use the double arrows. So if I hit the double arrow, it just moves everyone from my available member list to the selected member list. So that's one way to issue credits. It's one way to issue charges. Now let's take a look at our open credit screen. So our open credit screen is going to show you everyone within your organization who has an outstanding credit on your account. And it also allows you to add a credit. And again, when I select add credit at the very top of this screen here, it's going to show me that exact same screen. The only difference is that at the very top, I have to select my member just using the standard member selector. You search for the member by last name and then choose that particular member from your database. Now, when you're going through and taking a look at your credits, there are a handful of different things that you can do here. The first thing that I can do is edit any credit that is available. Now, you'll see that a lot of these have a different status. It's either partial or available. A partial credit means that the member has used part of the credit and they have a partial credit remaining on their account. Available just means that that member has the entire credit still available to them. Now, as far as issuing refunds, because what comes with your website, what is sort of standard is that the member gets a credit that sits on their account. They don't get a refund. So there are a couple of different ways that you can handle that. On the right-hand side, I see an option to edit every single credit that's available. Now, if you do not have our refund account with ClubExpress, and I'll go through that in a moment with you, you have the ability to still issue your own refunds as an organization. And that just involves you issuing a check. So at the very top, I have a few actions that I can take with each individual credit. I can edit the credit. So if I issued a $100 credit that really was supposed to be a $10 credit, I can go ahead and make that change. You can refund the balance. Now, refunding, again, if you are not using a refund account, it's going to be a refund that comes from you in the form of check or cash or whatever payment means you provide. When you issue a credit to someone, let's say Audrey, for example, and Audrey calls you up and says, I'd like this actually to be refunded to me, send me a check in the mail. Make sure that you come into the open credit screen or visit that particular member's profile so that you can cancel or waive the balance, and so that it doesn't allow that particular member to use that money twice, because she'll have a check in the mail and she'll also still have $20 or so sitting on her Northwest Balloon Club account where she could effectively use that money twice. So the options that you have, of course, are to refund the balance, to waive the balance, which just means that that particular member has decided they don't want to use the credit. And then the last would be to cancel that particular credit and remove it from that member's account. Now, let's talk about our refund account. So, of course, if you don't have our merchant account, you're going to need to handle refunds on your own. But if you do use ours, you can set up a refund account with us. You set up an account, which is a separate account from your bank account, where we hold funds that you provide that are used when you direct us to refund a member's credit card. So all of the details about our credit card refund account can be found in the help system. If you just navigate to help.clubexpress.com, on the left-hand menu, you navigate to Control Panel, Money tab, and Credit Card Refunds. And you can learn a lot about the service that we offer, and you can give our support team a call if that's something that you'd like to set up. So we talked about credits and refunds. Of course, we talked and looked at sending out credits through the People Manager using the charge credit feature. We've talked about sending out credits or charges through the multiple miscellaneous charge feature. We also talked about our open credit screen, where we are issuing credits, managing those credits, and potentially sending refunds to our members. The next stop that we're going to talk about today is our financial accounts section. And I hate to say this twice in one webinar, but this is also one of my favorite things. So if we take a look at the control panel, we're still in the money tab, but now we're going to switch gears and visit the setup section. And let's take a look at financial accounts. Now we have a webinar and a tutorial that talks about financial accounts. So again, I'll just give a very brief overview of what this is. They're a great way for clubs and associations of any size to do two things. One, tag funds on your site for boosted reporting capabilities. The second is to allocate money to be deposited into another account aside from your main bank account. Now, you don't have to do both. You can do either or. With ClubExpress, you have one main bank account, which is the default account that we use when we are depositing any money collected on your site, but also where we collect your monthly hosting fees, any other fees that you might have, such as for custom programming. You use financial accounts, though, to tell us, for example, I want all the money from one specific donation fund to go to a specific account. I don't want it to go to my main bank account. I've set up a different account for that. Even if you don't have multiple bank accounts, though, financial accounts can be used to tag funds with basically a specific category. And the way that's really helpful for you, if you take a look at the list of financial accounts that we have on our demo site, we have separate accounts for different regions. We have separate accounts for different fundraisers that we've created. We have an account for our annual conference. Even without multiple bank accounts, again, financial accounts are used to tag those funds. When you receive a statement from your bank, it's going to show you ClubExpress, for example, deposited $2,000 last month for you. But what happens when you want a breakdown of that? Financial accounts are going to allow you to run reports to see how much of that deposit came from donations, how much came from events, how much came from new member signups. And you can even assign specific financial accounts to specific items. So for example, we have, as the Northwest Balloon Club, an annual conference every year that's our biggest conference of the year. We want to know how much money is generated just from that annual conference. Maybe there's a donation fund that's set up for that conference in addition to the money that we're receiving from event registrations. There are a whole host of reasons why you might use financial accounts. And again, we have a webinar and tutorial that go through how to set those up with or without additional bank accounts. Now, we've talked about reports and, of course, how important financial accounts can be to your reporting capabilities. So let's go back into the control panel and take a look at some of the reports that are available to you. So under admin functions, that's where you're going to find a list of your reports. And when you first open up your report screen, you're going to see report groups. And most of these are going to cover the description of what you're going to see there. So let's take a look at transactions and payments by account. And let's take a look at user transactions by account as opposed to payments. And we'll go ahead and select next. Now I get to see a drop-down menu of all of those financial accounts that I've created. So I can view a list of all accounts, or I can break it down and just view one. I'm going to take a look at all accounts, and then I'm going to select a specific period. You can view all records, which might be quite a bit, especially if you've been with ClubExpress for a long time. But I'm just going to say, let's take a look at this particular year. And again, with all of our reports, you have a handful of output options. For demonstration purposes, I'm just going to select HTML, which just opens up my report in a new tab. It's just a really quick way to get a very quick snapshot of data. So at the very top of each of these sections, you'll see in bold the financial account that's being referenced. So I can see a total for each separate financial account that has been created. Under event registrations, for example, membership dues, all the way to the bottom. And of course, these are in alphabetical order. So it allows you to see a full breakdown of where all of that money is coming from, and could even help you decide which events are the most lucrative for you, which donation funds are bringing in the most money for you. So the next thing that I want to talk about is remitting funds and collecting fees. And this has to do with the monetary relationship between ClubExpress and your organization and how that works. So chances are that you have probably heard the breakdown of how we handle all of your money and how it gets into your hands. So I'm just going to give a little bit of a brief overview. So for those using the ClubExpress merchant account, of course, if you're using your own merchant account, the deposit schedule is going to be dictated by your provider. But most of you, again, if you're already using the ClubExpress merchant account, you know our ACH schedule. The way it works is whenever there is a credit card transaction on your website, it takes about 2 days for those funds to be deposited into our bank account. We hold the funds for an additional day just to make sure that there aren't any issues, like a member canceling the transaction. And then 3 times a month, on the 10th, the 20th, and the last day of the month, we transfer anything that we've collected to your bank account. So, for example, the transaction on the 10th will include funds from the 1st through the 7th, giving that 3-day grace period time to settle in. And so one of the ways you can kind of keep track of all of the funds going into your bank account and coming out is through bank account activity, which is again just through the Money tab and the control panel. So bank account activity, and now keep in mind, this is a demo club, so we're not going to have very much. But if I select search, I can take a look at any transaction that has occurred between ClubExpress and my organization. So I see all of the times that they've collected fees, whether it's the hosting fee or if it's a fee for a module or custom programming. And then anytime they have remitted any funds that they've collected on the site to my bank account. Now, on the right-hand side, I can view the details of all of those transactions in a report. I can view a summary, which is just going to give me basically what was sent to me, what those fees were, or I can view the details of that particular item or that particular deposit, which is going to break it down for me by line item. So if you really need to get detailed, I would go with the deposit details report. And again, this is money moving between ClubExpress and your organization. The next section is going to talk about some of the modules. So we're going to talk about QuickBooks. We're going to talk about the modules that you might activate that are in the Money tab that you might use the most often, member communications, how to get people to pay you, and last, we'll touch on that support that we offer for international clubs and associations. So first up, let's talk about QuickBooks. QuickBooks is available both a desktop and online version. The desktop version works obviously in a different way than the online version. As far as cost, the QuickBooks integration feature to be added to your website is a one-time setup fee of $500. It's not a yearly subscription, it's a one-time fee. Now, if you're using the desktop version of QuickBooks, what you see when you visit the QuickBooks item within the control panel is going to be an export button. It's going to provide you with an IIF file that you export from your website and import into your QuickBooks desktop software. Now, for the online version, all you do is you connect and give permission from your ClubExpress account to your QuickBooks Online account. And what that does, it's truly just a quick connection where really all you're doing is clicking a button and providing that export that shoots off automatically to your QuickBooks Online account. And so for that, I'm just going to show you quickly what that looks like in another one of our demo clubs where we have QuickBooks Online created for you. And so when I visit QuickBooks Online, all I'm being asked to do is connect to that particular item and then perform the export whenever I'd like. Now, with each of these options, you create the schedule where you export or make that connection. So you could do it weekly, you could do it monthly, you could do it bi-weekly. It keeps track of when you did your last export. So it's only going to give you the items that occurred between the last time that you ran that connection and the next time. You also get to run reports on what data was imported. So you still have access to your sort of raw data, but it handles everything for you. When you are integrating with QuickBooks for the first time, we just ask that you back up your data just to be safe, and you are basically walk through the entire process. So if you're interested in QuickBooks integration, check out our help system for more information under Control Panel, Money tab. We have a section for QuickBooks Desktop and QuickBooks Online. It'll walk you through some of the things that you would expect to see when you make that connection and some helpful information on how to make sure that you don't receive any errors, making sure that your QuickBooks item names match up within QuickBooks and on your website.
Okay, Samantha, there are a whole lot of questions about QuickBooks, and some of them have to do with enabling it, and some of them have to do with the way it works and using different features and such. These are very, very specific, and we will consider doing a webinar about QuickBooks. The problem with doing webinars and tutorials is that QuickBooks sort of requires live data, which is a little difficult to show online. And so if you have questions about QuickBooks, by all means, give our customer success team, our support team.
And yes, our support team is wonderful. They're more than happy to answer all of those really specific questions that you have. So let's talk about some of the modules that you might enable or items that you might touch. Donations, of course. Donations just allows you to create individual donation funds that your members can contribute to. You can, of course, run reports on each of your donation funds, make them available just to members or to non-members as well. You can allow anonymous donations. You can allow members to say that their employer matches donations. And you also have the ability to allow recurring donations. Now, when you add a donation fund to your website, of course, we have a webinar and tutorial that goes through our donations. So I won't go through all of those items today, but you'll see that there is an option towards the middle to allow recurring donations. Now, for some of you, that option might be grayed out. It does not cost anything extra to have that enabled. We just ask that you call us so that we can enable it. There are a couple of things to note about recurring donations. One, the member decides how often they'd like that donation to occur. They create their own schedule and they configure it when they make that donation. The second thing to note is that right now, only members can create recurring donations. And the reason for that is that we require that a credit card be on file in order to charge that credit card monthly, quarterly, yearly, whatever schedule that member has created. Because non-members don't have a member profile, they don't have a way to save a credit card within your database, and therefore we don't have a way to charge them on a recurring basis. So again, if recurring donations is something that you and your organization are interested in, just give our support team a call. It's just a quick back-end switch that they'll flip for you, and you'll be able to offer that to your members. The next item that I want to talk about is discount coupons. Discount coupons, again, one of my favorite things. I hope that if you aren't familiar with it, that you find a use for it. You can create discount coupons to use across your site based on a percentage or a flat dollar amount. You can make them available to everyone, to members only, to new members only. You can apply it to specific items on your site too. So you can give someone a discount coupon that they can use on anything, or you can offer trial members or prospective members or non-members a coupon code to use on their membership. Maybe as a big membership push, you contact any non-members that are interested in becoming a member and offering them a discount if they join within the next 2 weeks. You can offer discounts used on event registration, storefront purchases if you are using our storefront. And then the coupon code itself can be a couple of different things. Single code, multiple use. So for example, if you get an email from Old Navy that says, we're having our winter clearance, put in the code winter 2021 and you get 25% off. That's a single code that everyone in the country is using. You can also make it unlimited usage or limited usage. So you can say the first 10 people to use this code get 25% off. Or you can create multiple codes that each have a single use where you're giving every single person their own coupon code to use, and they can only use it once. So, we have, of course, webinars and tutorials to cover discount coupons. You can also consult our help system. But again, it's just an extra way that you can manage some money on your site, maybe generate a little bit more income. People have a coupon, they might be a little more likely to maybe join or register for an event. So before we move on to a couple of other tabs, let's talk about money options. So money options is going to be the last in this money tab of the control panel. And it allows you to say when your fiscal year starts. It's really just the general financial data for your organization. You decide what payment options you offer, what you want to do as far as offering discounts for cash or check payments. One of the items that we get asked a lot is, can we ask the members to pay for their own credit card fees? Unfortunately, that's not something that we are able to do for legal reasons, because different states have different rules as far as who's allowed to pay for those. But what you can do is offer a discount to your members who want to pay with cash or check. You also have the option towards the center of your payment options to notify a treasurer every time a payment is made. So if you are the type of person who wants to see every single payment that's coming through your site, go ahead and give this a quick check. And of course, double check through our titles that you are listed as the treasurer. We talk about titles and associating a title with a person in a lot of our other webinars. You can also consult our help system, making sure that you have a treasurer profile created and that you've also associated an actual person with that treasurer role to make sure that you are getting those notifications. If you scroll down a little bit further, we have sections where you can actually note what payment options are available and perhaps give some further instructions. Maybe you have a specific address that you'd like checks to be sent to, or maybe you want your members to be able to pay through Venmo and you provide your Venmo user ID for those members to pay. All of these other payment options are going to appear on that payment page that the member sees. Of course, the administrator sees it. If we scroll down a little bit further, we can create a refund policy. The credit card merchant account section is where you would initially set up your merchant account and go through that process. If you are currently using the merchant account through ClubExpress, you'll see a message that says your account is active. If we scroll down a little bit further, we see that we have PayPal integration. Connecting your PayPal account to your ClubExpress website does not cost you anything. So if you'd like your members to be able to pay through PayPal, if maybe they're not comfortable saving a credit card with your website, or they maybe just don't have a credit card that they'd like to use, they can pay through PayPal. Next up.
Note that this has to be a business PayPal account, not a personal PayPal account.
Yes. Next up is the QuickBooks option. So if you don't have QuickBooks enabled, you won't see this section. But once you enable QuickBooks, either desktop or online, you'll have a host of fields to fill in to make sure that, again, that data transfer goes smoothly, to make sure that all of your data on your ClubExpress site lines up with all of the data in your QuickBooks, either online profile or the desktop version. You can consult our help system or of course, give our support team a call to double check that you are filling out these fields correctly. Towards the very bottom, we can also change the currency symbol. So if you are in another country, and this touches on some of the internationalization that we offer, you don't have to use the dollar symbol. You can use whatever symbol is the standard currency symbol in your location. So let's go on to communications. So there are a couple of different places where you can manage your member communication. The first, of course, is our blast emailing feature. Now, if you aren't already familiar with blast emailing, maybe as a treasurer, this isn't an area that you touch. Someone else handles communication entirely in your organization. But within blast emailing, if I go ahead and add an emailing and I take a look at my distribution lists, we do have distribution lists that are available that may address some of your financial needs. For example, we have distribution lists for members who donated to a specific donation fund. We also can email those who have open renewals to contact them to let them know to go ahead, make that renewal, make that payment. And if we scroll down just a little bit further, we can email everyone who has a pending payment. So great way to make sure that you get paid is sending out a periodic communication, maybe quarterly when you're sort of cleaning up any outstanding transactions, to send all of those users who have a pending payment an email reminding them that they can sign in, make a payment online. Especially if maybe after seeing today's webinar, you integrate PayPal. And maybe you want to email your members letting them know that you now have an additional easy way to pay for things on your website. Now, it's also important to note that the emailing feature within the events module, if you're not already familiar, within each event, we have additional distribution lists that are available for emailing and communicating with your members. You can also access distribution lists for those who haven't paid for an event. So we give you a lot of ways to make sure that you get your money. And the second form of communication that you might use with your member is our system emails. Now, these are emails that are sent automatically based on user interaction with your website, whether it's member or non-member. We, of course, talk about system emails in many of our other webinars and tutorials, and you can find more information on them in the help system. But you can scroll through the list to find any of the emails that address a financial transaction. So anything where you're seeing that there's a payment confirmation, anything having to do with a charge to a member. On the right-hand side, you have the ability to edit those emails. So you can change the cadence. You can maybe add specific instructions that perhaps differ from what we state in the email. Even if you don't intend on making changes, take a quick look at these. Double check that they are the type of information that you want to send to your members. These are boilerplate emails, but you have the option to customize them to suit your organization. Now, as far as internationalization, we did talk about currency and how your currency symbol can be set in money options. And you can set your local tax rate. And the tax rate obviously can differ between sales tax in the United States, VAT, or I believe it's GST in other countries. So you have the ability to set your local tax rate and apply it across your website. So, Alan, let's open it up for questions.
Okay, so there were a lot of questions that were very, very specific to particular modules. And because this is more of a high-level overview of the tools that are available, and again, we could take any one of the modules and do an entire webinar about it and get into the minutia. I'm going to try to refer to the more generic questions and reiterate that if you have questions about particular modules and particularly how it applies to your setup, because different clubs have different options involved, it would be a good idea to give our support team, either drop them an email or call them. You can just show Samantha, the contact us at the bottom of every page. If you just click on that, and at the very bottom, there is a section that says website technical support. So this is a way that you, and for that matter, any of your members can reach our toll-free support line, and you can ask them questions. So if a member has questions about paying a bill or anything, they don't have to call you. They can call ClubExpress directly, which is really quite lovely. Now, some of the questions we have are, can you create a payment schedule for non-event items, such as membership dues, as if some members have to pay over time? And that may have to do with the way your dues are set up. Say some chambers of commerce are set up for quarterly payment of a particular membership type. So let's see if she's got one here.
I don't think that, well, so we have some trial memberships, but you have the ability to edit the duration of all of your memberships, where instead of it being maybe $1,000 for a year, you could break that down into, $250 every quarter.
Right. And the thing is that, does it send renewal notices automatically? Because there are some that, like with Chambers of Commerce, that are usually done every quarter.
Yes. So the default settings would be using the renewal settings that you've set for everyone. So before I move on to that screen, you can also set up automatic renewals, which notifies the member when they sign up that will be an automatic charge that gets pulled from them every quarter or month, depending on how often they are being charged for that membership. So if we go back into the control panel, renewal and expiration settings is where you double check when those renewal notices are going out, how often they're going out, in what form they're going out, to make sure that your members are notified when that payment is coming up.
Okay, there's a question that says, if a member, when they're ordering something or they're looking at a charge, they selected incorrect options and the amount due is incorrect, can this be reset? So the administrator, if somebody wanted to make a donation and they donated $1,000 instead of $100, can an administrator or a coordinator change these kinds of things? And the answer is generally yes. Can't do it after the fact. But if, say, we have a donation to a particular fund, you can actually go in and edit it. You can delete the donation entirely and then have somebody change it. But you can edit these things and make changes.
Mhm.
Let's see. It says, just to make sure I caught the answer to the question earlier, there were a lot of questions and answers. You can do payment schedules on events, but not on annual dues. I guess that would be similar to what we just covered. If
Mhm.
you want the dues to make automatic payments, well, don't make them annual dues, make them quarterly and having them renew quarterly. That's, I think, one approach. I don't know if you have another approach on that.
That's generally the approach that I suggest. Yes.
Okay. There's a question about PayPal. Can funds collected by PayPal be auto-transferred to bank accounts identified in ClubExpress? I don't know if that could be done. And even if it was able to be done, it would likely be done from the PayPal system to
Yeah.
transfer over. It's not something that ClubExpress could grab and move into their account.
Yeah. So anything that happens with PayPal stays with PayPal. We just provide the connection.
Okay, there's a question, can you output the transaction report? As it used to be able to. So my guess is if she goes back to the control panel.
The transaction search doesn't have an export feature, but within reports, you do have member and user transactions where you have, what is this, maybe close to a dozen different reports that you can run. So for example, under member user transactions by type, you get to separate out the type of transactions. So you can view them all, or you can view only sign up charges or transactions, only renewal transactions, or only event registration transactions, and so on.
Okay, here's a kind of a nice question. I like this one. It says, a member sends a check larger than the membership fee and wants the extra to be a donation. How do I credit that? If they owe $100 and send $125 by mistake, what they would wind up with, if you said that they paid $125, they would wind up with a $25 credit, which you as an administrator could then make a donation on their behalf. You could enter a donation same as they have. You say, well, who's entering this donation? And that way you could just, in effect, issue them a charge, and for the $25, and the $25 credit that they have would be applied. So she's showing here that if you want to make record another member's contribution, you could apply that credit. So it basically just makes a charge against them, and then you'll be able to just go in to their record and show it as a donation. I like that. It says, when a bogus donation is promised through the site, how can it be deleted, including deleted the personal info also? So a donation, like anything else, can be canceled.
As long as it hasn't been paid in full, you'll see an option to cancel that amount.
Right. And then you can go into the person and either flag them as delete the member. You could go into the privacy settings and remove them entirely. There's any number of privacy options that are available. Our payments are made with PayPal and credit card. Can I get a report that segregates by payment type? I think there is a report that will show you the member. I think it was, yeah, there it is. And by payment type and date. So by payment type and name, so you'll be able to see the PayPal versus the credit card versus the cash and all of that. And you can send it out as HTML. You can send it out as a CSV file. So this demo club obviously doesn't have a credit card and PayPal enabled, but you would get the appropriate breaks in the report. Let's see. There were a whole bunch of QuickBooks questions that are very specific to QuickBooks. If you have suggestions, and I will pass the chat window along to our development team with any open questions, because we do look at all of these things. But if you have any suggestions about the ways that ClubExpress could be made better, or if there's some new features or things you want changed, by all means, drop a note to ideas@clubexpress.com. That's IDEAS, ideas@clubexpress.com. And let's see. Oh, very nice. Someone says, thank you. I look forward to receiving Pointer this review, the recording, so they can share it with their board members.
Yay.
And says, can individual donations be flagged as tax deductible or non-tax deductible? I don't know, but I know that we can have both cash and non-cash donations. So you might be able to put something into a non-cash donation, even though it's money. The non-cash donation, I don't know if the non-cash donations are tax deductible. If someone offers you a piece of equipment that's worth $500, that may still be cash deductible. Again, these are getting down into the weeds of individual modules. And here, the goal of this webinar was really to give people an overview of the tools that are available. As Samantha mentioned, we have tutorials on most of the modules and webinars on many of them. And so we're a little over time, so I'm going to bid everybody farewell. I hope everybody stays safe and healthy, and we will see you in the next webinar. Thanks,
Bye,
everyone.
everyone.